What's up, basketball fans? Welcome to the Warriors Report. It's time to talk about the Toronto Raptors, and we have more news regarding them this morning, and that is that they are one of several teams reportedly interested in the services of Jordan Clarkson. This was reported by Brett Siegel saying that Clarkson has generated the most interest thus far with the Memphis Grizzlies, Milwaukee Bucks, Sacramento Kings, and the Toronto Raptors, said to be teams with initial interest following Rudy Gobert's departure earlier this offseason, sources tell Fast Break. So for today's video, I'm going to be discussing what the Raptors could potentially give up for someone like a Jordan Clarkson in a trade. I'm going to talk about some of the Raptors' weaknesses and the areas that Jordan Clarkson would help solve for the Toronto Raptors, and what I ultimately think of the acquisition. If the Raptors were to trade for Jordan Clarkson, would I trade for him? Would I not? I'll give you all of my thoughts in today's video. So if you're ready to watch this video, guys, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Let's try to get this video to 120 likes. And if you want to hit the subscribe button as well to join a basketball community that is very supportive here on this channel of each other, despite the fact that we have our differences of opinion, and as someone who actually likes to read comments, and I will be replying to all of your comments as well. This is definitely the channel for you. So make sure to hit the subscribe button as well. So with that being said, let's get into today's video. Now, as you guys know, I do like to give out shout outs on my channel, and for today's video, the shout out goes out to Phil Gap. So Phil, thank you so much for supporting this channel through your likes and comments. It is very much appreciated. Now let's talk about what the Raptors would potentially have to give up for someone like a Jordan Clarkson. Now, Jordan Clarkson does make about $13 million, which is going to be a little bit of a challenge for the Toronto Raptors because the way their roster is constructed, they have guys making $18+ million up to $30 million in Pascal Siakam, and then they have guys making about $11-12 million and below that. So it makes it a little bit challenging. But the issue, even with those $11 million guys, I believe is Chris Boucher, who we just re-signed this offseason, is that you can't trade him for several months because we know that NBA has certain rules. When you sign free agents, they can't be traded for several months. So that becomes a little bit of an issue. And another player you could possibly think of as maybe perhaps Thaddeus Young. But again, it doesn't necessarily look good on the Toronto Raptors because they had just signed him. He was a player they brought in during the NBA trade deadline. You trade for him, and then you sign for him, and then you trade for him. That doesn't look like a good look on the Toronto Raptors. So I don't see Thaddeus Young being moved. But one name that definitely comes to mind in terms of trade talks is someone like a Khem Birch, who makes about $16 million. But there is one thing concerning him, is that he has negative value on the market because he's essentially injured all of last year. Didn't play very well even when he did play. And the fact that he just had surgery, so he's going to be rehabbing and probably load managing during the season. So you're definitely going to have to throw in a lot more than that. Someone who definitely comes to mind in terms of something that Utah Jazz could potentially be looking at is someone like a Malachi Flynn. We know they've been stockpiling on draft picks and young players as well. And again, Malachi Flynn, same thing. He does not have a lot of market value because he didn't get a lot of minutes last season. And in the limited minutes he did play, he had an up and down season with the Toronto Raptors. But he is still young, and perhaps the Raptors could look to trade for him in a trade. He's a point guard, so maybe, you know what, the Utah Jazz would look for someone like a point guard because Jordan Clarkson does kind of fit in that position as well, point guard / shooting guard. But that still doesn't make up it to $13 million. Now, it's funny I see this next player, DJ Wilson, because this article I was reading, I want to present to you guys, presented the exact same thoughts that I had. And they said that that's why NBA Analysis believe they could be in the mix to land Jordan Clarkson, who's likely to be made available by the Utah Jazz. In this hypothetical scenario, the Jazz get Khem Birch, Malachi Flynn, DJ Wilson, and a 2024 first-round pick, top 10 protected, in return for Jordan Clarkson. So it's very likely the Raptors will have to throw in a first-round pick. Again, as I've said, guys, in my videos here, Danny Ainge is not someone that's just going to give up Jordan Clarkson without acquiring a first-round pick, especially given the fact that the Jazz don't have a first-round pick in the next year's draft. And I know you definitely want a first-round pick in that draft class for sure, but it makes it a little bit challenging to make a trade for Jordan Clarkson because, as I mentioned, there's several teams available that are looking to trade for Jordan Clarkson. He fits in on most teams. Every team wants a six-man off the bench that can just come in and provide a lot of buckets. That is Jordan Clarkson. So you're definitely going to have to throw in a first-round pick in order to acquire Jordan Clarkson. Now, here's the issue, though. If the Raptors do acquire Jordan Clarkson and they throw in the first-round pick, is Danny Ainge going to be asking for more? We know he's always asking for a lot from teams. And would the Raptors maybe have to throw in a second-round pick? Obviously, there's some other names you could throw in as well. I don't think the Raptors are trading any of OG Anunoby, Gary Trent or Precious Achiuwa. They're definitely off the table, and especially for Jordan Clarkson as well. Now, let's talk about how Jordan Clarkson would help the Raptors' weaknesses. Now, one of the major weaknesses, which I've highlighted several times on this channel, has been the Raptors' bench scoring. Jordan Clarkson would come in and be an instant spark off of the bench. And as you see here on the screen, the Raptors ranked dead last in scoring from the bench production last season. They had a lot of young guys come in. They weren't able to get consistent minutes, and they weren't really able to provide a lot of scoring. The Raptors only produced about 25.7 points off of the bench last season. And I mean, even when you take a look at the other statistics as well, like assist wise, 4.4 assists off the bench is truly really bad. And it's not a great stat overall, but that could be contributed to, again, a lot of young players not being reliable. The Raptors bench is a lot different this season. They have Otto Porter Jr., Chris Boucher started to play a lot better, and we know they acquired Thaddeus Young, and they re-signed him as well. And adding Jordan Clarkson to that mix would be amazing because it gives them a place that the Raptors do have a weakness, is not only in bench scoring, but also in terms of the guard depth as well. The Raptors don't really have someone playing behind Malachi Flynn. Well, I shouldn't say Malachi Flynn. I mean, Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr. Malachi Flynn is supposed to be the backup, but again, he's coming into his third season. We don't know how well he's going to be performing. We don't know how much minutes he's going to be receiving from Nick Nurse, who's very stingy with his minutes for the bench guys. So if you insert Jordan Clarkson in there, you automatically have a bucket getter right behind Gary Trent Jr. And in fact, you could probably compare the games a little bit in terms of just ISO scoring, being someone that can give you baskets in a hurry. So if the Raptors do acquire him, not only does it fill a need from the bench for a really good quality scorer off of the bench, but it also adds someone that can come in and relieve Gary Trent Jr. and even Fred VanVleet. If the Raptors see that Delano Banton and Malachi Flynn aren't playing all that well in the point guard position, you can slide in Jordan Clarkson at that point guard position as well. So again, he can play a few different positions there. He's listed at 6'4", so I think that's going to be a good trade if the Raptors were to acquire him. Again, the only question is how much are they willing to give up, and would the Raptors want to give up for him? And now another area I think Jordan Clarkson really helps the Raptors is the fact that he can finish at the rim. I mentioned that he is 6'4", so he's a little bit bigger than Fred VanVleet. He's a little bit shorter than Gary Trent Jr., but Gary Trent Jr., although he's listed at 6'5", he's way smaller than his size, and both of those guards in the Raptors starting lineup really struggle finishing at the rim. That is not the case with Jordan Clarkson. As you see here on this stat sheet here, from about 0 to 3 feet from the rim, Jordan Clarkson is hitting about 62.7% of his shots. In fact, even from 3 to 10 feet from the rim, he's still hitting about 51.5% of his shots. And even from 10 to 16 feet, 54.4% of his shots, which is really impressive. So again, it gives the Raptors several different options in terms of guard depth, not only to be able to mix and match guys. Like you can have Fred VanVleet play out there, who's a great three-point shooter. Jordan Clarkson is a decent three-point shooter, not the greatest, but then Jordan Clarkson can attack the basket, which really creates a lot of problems for defenses, and he can finish at the rim, which is a huge bonus for the Raptors because Raptors have a lot of guys that can either shoot the three-point ball or only finish at the rim. Pascal Siakam, Scotty Barnes, I know they can technically shoot the three-point ball a little bit, but they can't really, let's be honest, they're not great at it. So a majority of the game is live in the paint and the mid-range game. And if you get someone like a Jordan Clarkson, that just adds a little bit more variety to your guard depth, and you can mix and match with different players. So I think he definitely solves a lot of issues for the Raptors. It makes a lot of sense. Now, in terms of my final verdict on if the Raptors should acquire him, I will say one thing, guys. The Raptors usually like to keep a hold of their first-round picks because they're an organization that focuses a lot on development of those players because we know they have a hard time signing a lot of free agents. For whatever reason, a lot of American players don't want to come to Canada, which is fine because you want to be closer to home. I get it. And there's always that stigma around Canada. So I get it. A lot of players don't want to sign with the Raptors, but that's why the Raptors do keep their first-round picks. But the only question remains is, would they want to include it for Jordan Clarkson? And I say this because Jordan Clarkson has 1 year left on his deal, and then he has a player option. And also taking into consideration that the Raptors' two starters in Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr. are already heading into next offseason with player options, that's essentially going to leave the Raptors with 3 guards that are going to be paid big-time money. Obviously, Fred VanVleet is going to get a lot of money. We know Gary Trent Jr. is going to very likely get $20+ million. Where does that leave Jordan Clarkson? Are the Raptors willing to throw somewhere in the $16 million to $20 million range at Jordan Clarkson for several years while signing the other 2 guards? That becomes a little bit of an issue, right? Like how much money for their team that has already invested heavily in Pascal Siakam, and you also have to save some money for OG Anunoby the following season and Scotty Barnes eventually. How much money are the Raptors willing to give up for Jordan Clarkson? Because you're going to have to re-sign him eventually. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that he's going to opt out and want a bigger contract. And if he walks, that's even worse for the Raptors because the Raptors are not in a position where they are competing for a championship. And Jordan Clarkson, to me, just seems like a piece you would add to your final roster, or someone, a team like the Milwaukee Bucks, who are going to be in contention to win the NBA championship. The Raptors aren't quite there yet. So that's the only concern I would have, is not only are you going to have to re-sign him next offseason while trying to save your other two starters, save some money for these other two starters, is it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. So let's be honest, it's there's a lot of factors to take into consideration. Does the Raptors benefit from having Jordan Clarkson on the Raptors? I should say, do the Raptors benefit from having Jordan Clarkson on their roster? Absolutely, 100%. He's a great bench scorer. He can provide some relief for the guard depth. He'd be a great shooting guard on a Raptors squad. But again, there's several factors to take into consideration. Also, that he doesn't play defense, so it becomes a little bit challenging. We know Nick Nurse is really defense first coach, and it becomes a lot challenging for the Raptors. But we'll wait and see what happens. This is definitely an interesting player that I had mentioned a few videos ago. A lot of people liked him, some did not. But I do want to hear your thoughts. What are your thoughts on this rumor? What would you be willing to give up for Jordan Clarkson? Would you be willing to give up a first round pick for Jordan Clarkson? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, guys, I do have a trivia question for you today. And that trivia question is, how many teams did this former Raptor play for? Obviously, all of Raptors fans should know who this man is. How many teams did he play for? Did he play for A, 5 teams? Did he play for B, 3 teams? Did he play for C, 7 teams? Or did he play for D, 8 teams? So whoever answers this trivia question correctly first in the comments section will get a shout out in my next video. So that will be it for today's video, guys. So thank you so much for watching this video. And I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.